Okay, hello everyone. I'm from Evansville-Vanderburgh School Corporation in Evansville, Indiana, and so we've come here to talk about our student selection data tool for student advising. I've brought my colleagues here, Jacqueline, Barnette, and Rosengood, and the three of us are going to tell you how we came up with it and how we are using it and why we've decided to use the selection tool. So,
why? I'm Rosen, and this is the end of my first year at EVSC, and so I'm the belonging person. And one of my questions was, how do we determine who has access to rigorous curriculum, and how do we have our numbers ideally match, if not exceed, who we are serving in our larger district of just over 22,000 students. So it was pretty traditional teacher recommendation. If you tested into what we call high ability gifted, then you're in high levels of math, and if you're not, and then we backfill with some other people, and it was really the same population, mostly Paine, mostly Caucasian. So we wanted to know how could we diversify it by using additional indicators. And so we decided to come up with some different options, and then looking at them, and again, still scaling, but opening up the doors, ideally, whenever, but definitely in the middle years prior to high school, so we could drive those participation numbers and success numbers up.
Rosen. I'm Jacqueline Barnette. I work with our ESL population in the EVSC, but I also work with Francis in the data department as well. So what's down here was our prior pathways to honors coursework in middle school, and in our corporation we consider middle school 6th, 7th, and 8th, which was anyone designated with the gifted and talented automatically got into honors coursework. And then the pathway 2 was the 75th percentile on MOI, NWEA, above proficiency on INR, which is our state test, or teacher recommendation, and they had to have 2 of these. Okay. So what was that getting us? Well, this is our, we decided to focus in on math. We do offer advanced coursework in ELA, and some schools do honor social studies and science, and some offer world language, which was another discovery we made along this process that we're not consistent. But for math, as far as race participating in math, this starting in 14-15, this is what that outcome was getting us, those conditions. So the blue being primarily white. And so then here we have 21-22, we're starting to increase, and then 21-22, this is our total demographics. So you can see like where we are as a corporation for our demographics, and then who are sitting in these seats based on how we determine that as a district. So this is not something we're proud of. This is not something we're happy about. So let's also look at socioeconomic. So again, same for math, but this time we're looking at free and reduced lunch and paid. And you saw on Rosen's slide, we're about 50-50 paid and then free and reduced lunch. And then yet here's who's sitting in our honors coursework in middle school. So again, not happy about that. So what are we going to do about it? So the problem statement that we had when we really looked at this with this opportunity for funding with Johns Hopkins was that we have limited students who qualify as high ability, that's an Indiana term, based on testing criteria, and those selected by school personnel to backfill class rosters. Of this group, as we just saw, the majority were white and fell into the paid lunch. And then I'm going to let Francis take over about how we tackled this. It's very exciting.
okay, so there are kind of 2 components to the selection tool that we decided to try to create to address those deficiencies in our process of finding students to enroll in honors classes. So particularly the 5th grade students, how do we get them enrolled in 6th grade honor school courses so that they can continue throughout middle school? Particularly because when we talk about high school students and getting them into AP courses, and then high school teachers say, well, if we're looking for a diverse population of students who've never done this before, we're starting way too late. So we said, let's take this back to our 5th graders to get them ready for 6th grade. So we started off with a questionnaire that addressed a number of different aspects. There were 3 questions that asked them about different extracurricular activities and things that they did outside of school. There were 4 questions that asked them about how they felt about how they performed on courses, how well do they think they do in their coursework. There's 2 questions that address the fixed versus growth intelligence theory that states like intelligence is something fixed that you can't change versus, I was going to say people probably heard this before, versus is something like more malleable that you can change. There were about 18 questions that focused on focus and self-control, your ability to think through your coursework, to work on something and not be distracted, to do activities and remain engaged in it. So there were 18 questions that addressed that. And then particularly for what we were looking for, what was their interest and expectations in taking honors course? Is this something that they wanted to do? Is that something they felt like they were capable of doing? Do they think they would need some help with it and then maybe they'd be successful? So all of these were questions for the student survey.
How often was that survey given?
It was just given once in the fall. Was it fall or early spring?
We did it like in February.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
We developed it in the fall though.
Okay, yeah. That was one of the creation of it. So we just did it once. That's a good question though. Okay, so then there was an overall selection tool that we created. We used our data warehouse to grab most of the data. So we uploaded the student survey component. So those are the 5 categories, the extracurricular activities, course performance, etc., that you saw before. And so each of these sections had a different range or amount that you could get on the on each of the aspects of it. So 0 to 5 on the survey. So that meant with a certain number of questions, you could get like a 1. I guess I should use my. You can't see it. You could get like a 1. If you got a 1 on all of the different areas of the questions, you got a 5. So it was a range of 0 to 5 for the survey. We also plugged in demographics because that's the kind of key that was missing from the previous survey. Or the process. And so if they had gifted or high ability status, free reduced lunch status, or if they were a minority, they got a point for each of those. So that could range from 0 to 3. And then we had assessment and grade. So if they were, for the NWA, would fall a winner, if they were above standard, or if they were above standard on the previous year state assessment, they got a 1. At least a 1. Or either one, they got a 1. Same thing for ELA. If they were above either one of those, they got a 1. And then in course performance, for math, ELA, and reading, if they had an A, they could receive 2 points, a B, 1 point. Other than that, it was a 0. So we reached our, and this is the point we could probably start passing out the little cards. I think I lost my purse. I'll sit there and let me. Okay. So here's a rough version of the tool. So keep in mind, this is not going to be a sum. You're not looking for like, wow, he got a 7 or something like that. It's more just the ability to filter on the different categories. So, for example, 0 to 5 for the survey, demographics, like I said, that ranges 3, math assessment and grade assessment. And so there are fields before this that provide more detailed information about those fields. But what you would do would be like, okay, let's say you just wanted to start with someone who seemed like they got like a 4 or 5 on the survey. You were filtered for a 4 or 5. Then you can start looking at the other categories and seeing how they added up, and even scroll to the side and look at those students and maybe dig further into what those signify, and then see where there's some gaps, where there are some students who you think, okay, they probably could actually take a honors course, but they don't seem to be listed as having taken one. So that's the main gist of the tool. We have like a really quick activity. Did everybody get cards for now? Okay. So what I want you to do with the cards is we have two students. We have student A and student B. We have some information at the top. Now, only some of the information were we really using in the past, like we were using winter NWEA and HA or high ability or gifted status at the top. So there were a lot of these that were being used before, but that information is provided below. But below is are the categories for the selection tool. So the survey, the demographic performance, this one is just ELA, assessment and grade, and reading. So my question to you is, would you choose either one of these students to be in an honors course next year? And I'll give you like a minute just to look over it, over the cards, and tell me yes.
Could you put up the slide that had the, like those
Yes.
boxes with the...
And you know what?
Can you go back?
Well, we have one. Thank you. You know the next slide. Yeah. Is your student going to take honors courses next year?
Can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
So, I mean, are there typically, is there a specific reason somebody would have an NA for survey? Like, do
That
they
is
choose
a
not
good
to take the
question.
survey? or-
That is a good question. And that is a problem of practice situation. So, not every school was in agreement with like doing the surveys.
God.
So,
So
if
in our
everyone
district, yeah, if it's an adult decision versus a student decision, we sometimes think about it.
see, yes. Oh.
Okay.
Look, my colleagues are like, he's getting it. Yes, that is some of the practical aspects. Okay. All right. So this is not an either-or situation. You do not have to choose student A over student B, but raise your card A if you thought student A should go to take an honors course. Okay, raise your card if you thought student B should take an honors course. Okay. So interestingly enough, yes.
And all of them. See, you know me.
Well,
A, B,
yes,
D,
yes.
let them try.
So first of all, it is the attempt to try to get more students in. So if you chose both, that's okay. And here's the thing again, this is not like you're summing them up. You're weighing out a lot of different information, which is not what we were doing before. Actually, we weren't even weighing out a lot of the academic information. So sometimes a student would not do so well on the spring NWA or winter NWA, and we would not even look at the prior year or grades or anything else. And we definitely were not looking at demographics. So the point of this is, and these are based on real students, and student A was originally not going to be signed up for honors courses. And then once looking at the additional information, the teacher said, hey, let's go ahead. And she did actually request honors courses outside of the survey. So if she had taken the survey, I bet she would have gotten a 4 or 5, which is again, that whole logistic piece of it where it's just like, let's all be on the same page with this, but we're still working on that. So this is just an illustration of how we were able to get a few more kids on the list that weren't on there before. And so we'll be tracking their information to see how they ultimately do. And our final slide is, we do have some summer PD coming up. The summer PD will really stress to teachers, because that's one of the things we're having the hardest time with, is teachers getting in their mind, this might be a different group of students. How do we get the teachers a growth mindset? You know, how do we say, here are students who you were on the fence probably getting them in there. Let's think of some ways to keep them in, keep them retained, think about their growth. So with the help of Johns Hopkins University, we have a little bit of money to pay for this summer training. Okay, that's it for EBSC. Thank you.
It's like it's an intimate gathering, an evening with. Are you just gonna go to the tool?
Yeah.
Okay, so about
Give me
6,
just one.
I'll talk while you're bringing it in. So about 6 years ago, I came to my first PASS conference, got charged up, super excited, went back, worked with our local university to get our benchmarks, got our attendance, behavior, course completion, or GPA predictive models all set, and built a tool, built a dashboard to go out to our college and career advisors. Super excited to show them how many of their students were actually ready for post-secondary that had been kind of discounted. And so I would, show them the tool, then give them a list, like here are your students, here's where they fall, here are some suggested interventions. And they took, I don't know if I have one, but they took reached in the desk, pulled out the reddest pen they could find, and they started crossing students off. So the students that were predicted to go and succeed, they would say, oh, no. And so, we took that as inspiration, and then I share that story, because that's the soul of this tool. We saw the mindset problem too. These people had already decided which students were going to go and succeed, despite all this science that said, this person looks exactly like the people who go and succeed from this school. Okay, so we knew that was a problem. We also know that about 20% of our students who do go into post-secondary go to a school that matches their academic ability. So they go to a school that is as selective as possible for their GPA and their ACT score together. And we know that when you look at an estimated post-secondary completion rate, so their chances of graduating from the schools they matriculate to, if you are in an affluent school in Chattanooga, Tennessee, a public school, you got a 50-55% chance given the places the kids go. And a lot of that has to do, we have 2 in-town university, or 1 in-town 4-year and 1 in-town 2-year, so that brings that average down a little bit. But if you're in a school facing challenges related to race or socioeconomic status, that goes to 17%. And we saw a lot of kids just getting funneled. This, if they did dare say, hey, I want to go to college, they would get funneled to a place. So we decided to take the next few years to develop a tool that we were going to put in the hands of the kids. And working with their college and career advisors, and this tool would give them a list of schools that match them academically, and with a real err on the side of too rigorous. We would rather they take a list that is too rigorous, where you have to kind of here's what you got to do that, because that's a way better conversation than you're not college ready at all, right? So it's raises the expectations. It's been difficult in terms of professional development with the advisors, because the mindset slide, we could use that too, right? Because if they're fixed, they don't get it. Why would you give them this school? This is crazy to show them this school. It's just like, well, these 10 schools are better than the one that you showed them that I know they got a 3% chance of graduating from. Like, why would I do that? You know? Especially in our city, you could drive 15 minutes longer and triple your chances, which still are low, but they're tripled. So, better than what it was. And then we also obviously had to throw in some things about fit, right? Money is important, I've heard. I wouldn't know, right? I've worked in nonprofits for 20 years, but there is money, I think, in places, and distance from home, major, all those kinds of things. And I'm going to get right into the fun part. So I had all these big ideas, and of course Dan Chandler, our president, had all these big ideas. And we got together and we found someone who was, I won't say stupid enough, I will say ignorant enough about education to come and join our team, and the systems were attached, not education, but the systems around the things that we battle, that everyone in this room I know has battled. Whenever you don't understand why you limit, like why would you limit how many people could take a rigorous course? Like that's silly, like that doesn't make any sense to me. Even if you know, oh, they're gonna bomb us, it's like, well, they won't, the second time it'll be less bombing, the third time it'll be less bombing, And also, teacher, you wanna take it, let's see how you do. Anyway, get off that soapbox. But he agreed to come on board, built some great tools for us, but right now we are to a place where we have this tool called DegreeU. It's a mobile app. It's for students, primarily 11th graders, that we encourage use with any. I've had my 14-year-old use it. And she's matched with a school that I can't afford, so we're gonna work that out. But hey, I gotta walk the walk, right? So I'm gonna be quiet and let David walk you through this. But David Morton has taken the craziness and created this awesome thing, and then I'll talk a little bit more about our next steps after he's given us a quick walkthrough.
Yes. So when Keith first came to me with this project, he showed me a sort of like a big dashboard that had about 30 different inputs on it. And so and it was like basically the expectation was that students were going to go through and select things like what's, what their, there's the obvious stuff like what their GPA is, what their ACT score is, how far away from home they wanted it to be, but also to kind of wrap their mind around concepts like selectivity, match, undermatch, overmatch. And I realized, like, he started talking to me about this stuff, and I realized very quickly I was in way over my head when it came to a lot of those concepts. And I knew that 10th and 11th graders would be as well. So what we tried to do was to just try to streamline as much of that process as possible. And so I'm going to walk you through how we go about collecting information from students, and then what we want them to do with it and how we want them to engage with this app. So I have already signed in, so I'm just going to jump straight to the list creation process here. And all of this data that we're collecting is local to, there we go, I can scroll that way, is sort of local to our public school system in Hamilton County. But I am going to go through and not select that one. There it is. Let's select here. And I'm going to enter in my credentials for Eastridge High School, which happens to have a very large and growing Hispanic population. And I'll just leave this as that. Collect a little bit of academic information. I'm going to go with the average in our county, which will be right around in here. It's just some very basic information, how far away from home do you want to be. I'm going to start with 2 hours, and I'm going to leave these unselected. We'll come back to these in a minute. And then finally, what their household income is. And at this particular high school, in general, the average household income is below $30,000, and we're going to leave this at in-state tuition colleges for the financial fit piece. And so that's it for this in terms of the sign-up process. You log in. I happened to log in ahead of time because I was using my Gmail account and I didn't want to enter my password in while everybody was watching. So you log in, you create an account using your Gmail account, and then you go through this questionnaire, and then you get your first list of recommendations. So we're going to take a look here, and we get sort of a pretty average list size in terms of the colleges. We have, so far we have 0 favorite colleges, and I'm going to talk about this in a little bit. 24 colleges are considered academic matches for the academic credentials I put in. 65 meet the personal fit criteria, and then 52 they're either in-state colleges or they offer enough financial aid to where they are right within this particular, they offer pretty decent financial aid packages for this particular student. The graduation rates that we're showing here are, in most instances, the graduation rates for Hispanic students. If you recall, I entered in as if I was a Hispanic male. So all of the graduation rates that we show, for the most part, are based on what that person's race is. Financial aid, this is the average financial aid amount that student can expect to receive from this institution based on their household income. And then of course, like distance from home, that's pretty obvious. That's keyed into the particular high school that I selected. So the student is given this list of recommendations, and they have we were trying to use this, oh no, okay, there we go. Trying to use a little iconography to show that this is an academic match, a personal fit, and a financial fit. And the colleges that are shown, the more that they hit those 3 different buckets, the higher up the list they get pushed, as well as the graduation rate, which we're always trying to promote. And so the student can go through and they can change the size of the recommendations, they can see more, can start to get into colleges that don't have very good graduation rates for these particular students. Or they might have not had any students from a particular demographic group attend there. And then, so then from there, the student can kind of review these and say I'm liking some of these, so I'm just going to go through and start adding them to my college list. And they can use this tool as a way to help them kind of navigate some of the colleges that perhaps they're interested in learning more about. The idea behind this is that when hopefully a student is using this early on in their junior year of high school, so that when they start meeting with an advisor, they will already have, instead of that sort of introductory conversation of, okay, what colleges are you interested in? What are you interested in studying, etc. The student can go to that session with their advisor and already have a little bit of a grounding in some of these ideas and have some stronger ideas about things they're interested in pursuing. The other feature I wanted to show you real quick is that these are just settings that a student can change at any point. This little sidebar over here, they're able to go through and change different pieces of information. They can search for majors on here as well. Let me see. It's hard to type. This way. Here we go. So they can go through and select colleges that are that offer a particular program that they're interested in. One second. There we go. All right. So probably a little bit hard to see in that particular screen there, but essentially it will start showing colleges that only offer those programs. We start with undecided at first and kind of cast a very wide net. And then the student can use this tool to kind of start to drill down and find things that are very particular to them. So for instance, if a student wants to attend HBCU, they have that as an option as well. And so we get a very small list at that point. There's only one college that happens to offer that particular program at HBCU in Tennessee within 2 hours from home. And so then all their favorites are saved here, no matter what they enter in as their particular settings, just because that's kind of particular to that individual student. And then we also include some information here about the colleges that we know our students are already attending. So we know because of the data in our relationship with the school system in Hamilton County, we have a good idea of which colleges are students most likely to attend currently. So we're able to kind of show them like where that fits with the settings that they've given us. So they say, I want to do X. This is my academic background. This is what I want to study. This is how far away from home I want to be. And then we can kind of show them the popular choices where, you know, as Keith had mentioned, a lot of students were already kind of being funneled. We can say like, maybe in some instances this particular college is a good fit for you. It is a good match for you, but maybe sometimes it's not. So yeah, that's degree U. Any questions?
I can't even imagine the number of sources that you have running underneath here.
This is this is based off of 2 data sources. One is the iPads database that all colleges and post-secondary institutions report to the federal government through the Department of Education, I would assume. Yeah. So this is we basically took some of the data from that we needed for this particular tool and integrated it into this app. And then the second piece is really kind of geared around that academic selectivity piece, which is just kind of happens under the hood. Keith has done a lot of work with the local data that we have access to kind of understand, like, you know, what type of academic credentials does a student need to typically succeed at a particular college. And so it's just those 2 data sets though.
Wow.
And nobody's going to no place. So we set it up where if you enter zeros for everything, you're still gonna get. Yeah. We're still gonna push. Because remember, this is to be used with your advisor, your parent, or you know whatever trusted guide you have. And the challenges have been, right now our big challenge is making this accessible. So I love how it looks, especially on a phone. Like usually I see this on a phone. I haven't seen it this big in a long time, but it's really great to navigate. But there's still a lot of gateway language on this, so it needs more icons, needs to have a better flow. So we're working on that. And also professional development. The kids, you give them access and they just use it. But the grown-ups, we still go through that. Well, why is it giving me these places where that'd be a real stretch for them to go there? And you know, and my answer is that means it's doing its job, right? Like that's what I want, is for them to have that conversation about those more rigorous places. And I think our final challenge is just to get people to get students to get student use up. That's going to help a lot once we redesign, get this on the App Store. And that's something we're hoping to do by fall, yeah. And right now, a lot of this we created with Gates funds, and we're right now under a grant with Tennessee Score, which is a state agency. And we are just continuously improving it and working on making it better and more accessible. That's where we are. Mm-hmm. It's been David has done an amazing, you can imagine one person is in charge of all of this. So it's pretty awesome to have that. And he is pretty nice to me. If I dream up something crazy, he's like, okay, I'll see. He usually doesn't do it, but at least he says that. And it's also, if you go to degreeu.app, it's like, I had a slide, but I'm not gonna pull those up. Yeah, like, I don't know if we can see it. But that, I mean, any of you can try it out, go to degreeu.app, and if you want to just reach out to me with email, I'll send you the link. But even if you're not from Hamilton County, you can, fake your way through it and just enter whatever, just so you can play around with it. So we do hope to expand eventually. It's right now it's tailored to Hamilton County benchmarks, but we would love to see something like this, or local versions of this be other places, just to make that. In my opinion, the list can't be too long. Like, let's dream, let's put it out there and then work our way back from that. So that's it.
Can I ask what the graduation rate, you said, so that's from iPads?
Yes.
Yeah, unless we have unless our in size is sufficient locally,
Got it.
and we would use that, but otherwise we have to default to
So then,
iPads.
did you say so is it the overall graduation rate, or did you say you were matching it by,
Matching by race and ethnicity.
Yeah, by race and ethnicity, yes.
and gender, or just?
Just race and ethnicity. You can do either or in iPads. Like you can do
iPads doesn't have a cross tab?
right. You can do gender, or you can do race and ethnicity. But there's no. I'm not familiar with any data in there that. Yeah, and I've spent way too much time with it. So.
I wanted to ask, so whenever the colleges are listed, are you able to click on them and it takes you
Currently,
to-
no. We had a different version of the tool before we put it out in the fall that did have, you could go into basically what's called a details page, and you get a lot of different data points and information. We ended up streamlining, cutting that out last fall when we rolled this out to students, primarily because the design of it was just not very clean. It was just a lot of numbers on the page, and we were just, at that point, the decision was, let's just get students started in this process. When we do we're going to be doing more design work over the summer. We have funding to have somebody come in and do a professional design, because I'm just an engineer. I build this stuff. I don't really make things look pretty. So that's one of the challenges, one of the things that we're hoping to address in there, because one of the things that we learned when we worked with students on this was they actually liked having, being able to get access to that kind of information. What are the enrollment numbers look like at this particular school? Particularly for students of color who are interested in, are they going to go and be one of 5 Hispanic students there? That might be a deciding factor for them, because they're not going to find, it's going to be harder for them to find the community of other students that they want to be a part of there. So that is definitely something that's currently being worked on.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Relatedly, I was wondering if you all had plans or were thinking about layering in those factors that are most predictive of college outcomes. So graduation rate is obviously number one, but then also extent of financial aid, which I think is built in there. I think number of students who come from a certain demographic background is a huge one. How do you all land on the indicators that you have? And are you thinking about adding indicators?
That's a question for you.
So we stuck with just graduation rate because we wanted the mindset to be finish.
Yeah.
We've done a good job over the years of getting more students too, but then they just, do their 3 semesters and go home. And we want, within 6 years, we want a degree or credential. We will, as we get more users, we will probably add other indicators. I did want to add too that David's created a really cool, he's not ready to show it yet, but he's created a really cool back end for advisors. So if I'm a college and career advisor, I can look and see who's making what lists, I can see what lists you've made. And you can imagine as you build that out, for those of you who work with students especially, how powerful that will be to have that, be able to make that connection with students and just know ahead of time what kind of conversation you're going to have, I
just wanted to add one more thing in terms of the the graduation rate. There's also the selectivity rating, which is determined by an algorithm that Keith designed along with some partner of ours from Chicago. It was one goal, yes. But it is purely, like, in terms of the academic match piece, that is purely driven by academic data.
Yeah.
So whether it's graduation rate or students' ACT or the GPA, or where we know our students in Hamilton County have already done well, it's driven purely by that. We have not really had any big conversations yet about using things like financials to determine, like, whether or not a student is likely to graduate. I mean, it's a very valid point because, you know, if you're able to cover a good chunk of your tuition through financial aid, you're probably much more likely to.
Well, I think that's the number one predictor for low income students,
Right.
And I think one of the major risks, right, is that you do 3 semesters and then you're saddled with crippling student debt for the rest of your life, or, you know, for a decade and a half. So I think, like, I used to work with a network of charter schools that served almost exclusively low-income students, and in the, I don't know, early aughts, early 2010s, we were saying, or this network was saying, essentially, like, you want to get kids into the most selective college that they're qualified for. And after 8 years of looking at the data, they said that's actually exactly what you don't want to do. You want to get kids into the college that they're most likely to graduate from in the shortest period of time with the least debt.
Right.
And that actually becomes, like, the more powerful set of indicators. And so that, like, has completely transformed the way that they do college counseling.
Yeah. What I would be, from my perspective, is somebody who's, I mean, Keith is very much in sort of the weeds of the data modeling. From my perspective, what I would need to look into something like that and make that a factor in this particular app would be a data set that really kind of points to not only there's sort of like the broader trend, which we can all point to and look at, but then looking at it from a school by school basis. But yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I was aware of that, but I hadn't really ever made the connection between those two pieces before in terms of this tool.
It's really cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Is the data set,
We have like 1 minute.
okay, is it static or is it like you're tapping into like grad rate? Is it like, this is it for this?
New every year, so it's.
So you updated it?
Yeah. We basically take 12 to 15 database tables from iPads every year.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
So I was just wondering if we could talk, because we seem to be much in the same community we are in terms of service, factory. How on the front end you continue to march forward with the college is a viable option that does matter for people. In light of people going, well, I work in a factory and I'm fine, and so do and so why, and all of those pieces. Because I just looked up all the Chattanooga statistics and I do have a friend, I was like, see, if that's us, it's us. So not in here, so we have a few seconds now. But how you continue, because I do think what you're saying is important and inspiring, and absolutely I'm on that page.
Yeah, we're adding a degree, as we speak, we're doing research on degree work to kind of add that in as a component as well, just because politically it's a huge push.
Degree worth over a career too, not just that 2 to 3. The money that you earn in your 20s.
It's right now vocational is huge in Tennessee, and not new vocational, but very traditional.
Yeah, exactly.
So especially, and it's funny, it's usually a certain demographic that's great for.
They're all educated, ironically.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, we do have to. We've made some. I will say that it's been awesome because of where we've gotten funding from. It's pretty pure, so we haven't had to make a lot of. It's completely student-centered. So because it's not commercial, we have not had to make a lot of.
We're not selling ads.
Yeah, we haven't had to make.
You know, it's amazing what you can do when you're student-centered education.
Thank you all so much.